Reading Exodus 17, 1 to 7. Then all the congregation of the children of Israel set out on their journey from the wilderness to wilderness of Sin, according to the commandment of the Lord, and camped in Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. Therefore the people contended with Moses and said, "Give us water, that we may drink." So Moses said to them, "Why do you contend with me? Why do you tempt the Lord?" And the people thirsted there for water, and the people complained against Moses and said, "Why is it you have brought us up out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst?" So Moses cried out to the Lord, saying, "What shall I do with this people? They are almost ready to stone me." And the Lord said to Moses, "Go on before the people and take with you some of the elders of Israel. Also take in your hand your rod with which you struck the river, and go. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock in Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water will come out of it, that the people may drink." And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. So he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah, because of the contention of the children of Israel, and because they tempted the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?"
We're certainly grateful that you're here this morning to hear another lesson from God's Word. There's a painting up here. It's out of a book, and it was done by James Tissot. He was born in the first half of the 19th century, and his mother was pious. And so he read about Jesus and Bible stories, and he was interested in that, but he more or less forgot a little bit about it until he became older. And he was a very famous artist, impressionist. But as he got up in years, he turned back. He had a religious experience, and he turned back to the stories of his youth, and he said he was going to dedicate his art to the life of Christ. And so he produced over 300 paintings of Jesus and the life of Christ. And he rejected the old Renaissance view where you would show Jesus maybe at a Gothic temple or and people wearing European clothes. And he wanted to be much more accurate. All I want to point out here, and we'll be talking about this throughout the lesson, is that you see Satan here and Jesus, and it's a bird's eye view, and it's a little bit frightening, intimidating, looking down. Satan's behind Jesus, whispering in his ear, but he's transparent. And Tissot wanted to show the contrast between this malevolent force that's behind things versus the solid masonry of the temple, which represents God and belief in God, and behind Jesus the Christ, who's much more solid, much more visible. So you have this malevolent force. And it has been said that the greatest trick of the devil was in convincing the world that he doesn't exist. Of course, one of the tricks that he does is trying to convince us that God does not exist, have doubt in God, but his greatest trick is in convincing us that he doesn't exist. He is, he's around. We see the temptations of Jesus here. But today we've dismissed it. We've dismissed the idea of sin, and look at the world, look at the state of the world today because of that. So we have been looking at the temptations of Jesus, and this morning we look at the second temptation. I don't think there's anybody here who's not had some kind of a trial or gone through some suffering, and all of a sudden another one comes along. Have you all had that? I'm trying to go through this, and all of a sudden something else comes along, and then something else comes along. Sometimes you hear people say, "It never rains, but it pours." These troubles keep coming. Well, when we look at Jesus and we see that he faces a 1, 2, 3 punch from Satan, when it happens to us, when you think things can't get worse and something else comes along, Jesus experienced the very same thing. So encouraging to us to know that he survived. Now, Matthew wants to show that Jesus is the king. He is the legitimate king. And throughout his gospel, he points out that he is a king. And of course, he's living at a time Herod and Herod's sons are ruling in Palestine, but they are vassals. They are not truly in power. They are subject to Rome. And here, Matthew wants to show if Jesus can resist against all dominions, including that dominion of evil against Satan, if he can resist, then Jesus truly is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. So Satan here is whispering in his ear, just as he comes and he whispers to us and he tries to turn us against whatever. And he causes us to doubt God, to doubt ourselves, to doubt our relationship to God, to doubt that maybe God would even care for us. But in the first temptation, which we looked at last time, Jesus showed that he trusts in God to provide. And he proved it, but the temptation is not over. And I've used this analogy before, the hockey net or soccer net, whatever net you want to talk about. To get the victory, you have to get it between two posts. Satan wants us to think that there's only one post, but there are two. So Jesus shows here that he trusts God will provide. So now Satan is going to swing to the other side to try and get him to avoid something else. Oh, you trust in God, do you? Well, and you can quote from scripture, can you? Verse 5 of Matthew 4. Then the devil took him to the holy city and placed him on the pinnacle of the temple, saying to him, if you are the Son of God, throw yourself down. For it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up so that you will not dash your foot against a stone. So you think God will provide? Let God prove that you are the Son of God. If you are the Son of God, there's that doubt. He keeps going at Jesus. If you are the Son of God, if you are the Son of God. Satan knows who he is. He doesn't want to say, well, yeah, Jesus actually floats down and doesn't splat down below. I guess you are. No, he doesn't want that. It's the doubting aspect. So he takes him to the temple. He sets him up on the pinnacle and prove it. And here are verses. You like verses from the Bible? And he quotes from Psalm 91. And what's frightening is that he quotes accurately. And that's something that we'll look at a little bit later on. We have to remember that Satan can quote scripture when he wants, when he can pervert it and twist it to his own use. Now, initially, this seems like a dare. And sometimes we just look it over and think, oh, yeah, we see boys. I dare you to jump out of the tree or run across the street before that car comes, whatever. It is not a silly dare at all. Because what he's trying to question is, how much does Jesus trust God? Do you really think he's faithful? Do you really think he's going to protect you and shield you, as it says in Psalm 91? So it's frightening here. Again, we see, first of all, which we've looked at, that temptation to doubt God's words. If you are the Son, if you believe, if you look at this. But now, not only does he want you to doubt his relationship with the Father, but he's going to use scriptures to try and create that doubt. The scriptures say this. Do you really believe it? The scriptures say that. Do you really believe it? Create it. Create that doubt. And it can happen to us if we cherry pick certain scriptures and we just look at that. And we see people do that all the time. And sometimes we read in the Bible and we see what God can do, but it doesn't seem like he's doing much in my life right now. And we see how God helped over here, but it doesn't look like that's happening for me. And we read Psalm 91, God will guard your steps. And yet my life is still filled with pain and with misery, and things aren't going well. Where is God? And sometimes we say, does God care about me? Does he really care about me? And if you've ever asked that question, does God care because I'm caught up and I don't know what's going on, you're not the first person to ask that. You did not invent that question. Brian Van Alstyne gave us a lesson not too long ago about Jesus in that boat. in a storm on the lake. And the disciples there were terrified. And what do they say? I quote Matthew 4 or Mark 4:38. Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? So if you've ever said, God, do you care about me? Do you still care about me? Don't you care about me? You're not the first person. They asked that same question. And we know how that story turned out. Jesus questioned their faith. Where's your faith? And the storm was calmed. So this is a test for Jesus. Now, sometimes we think that tests, temptations are something that is bad, but it's actually neutral. Testing is neutral. If you're a student, you don't think it's neutral, but you just want to find out how much does an individual know. Medical tests. Well, we don't like medical tests. Nobody wants to get jabbed and whatnot, but what is here? What is present? What is it about? We test metal, we test materials. So it's a neutral phrase. But this test for Jesus is intensified. Notice where Satan takes Jesus. He didn't take him to Niagara Falls, Mount Everest, the Grand Canyon. He takes him to the temple. And what does the temple represent? The presence of God. If you are the Son of God, well, you know that you should be there. If you are the Son of God, well, maybe your parents presented you at the temple. And actually, Tissot did use these very stairs in his little picture on the painting of the presentation of the temple. Then God is here. God is right there. You're never going to find the presence of God more strongly than here. So Jesus, he will protect you if you are the Son of God. You're right in his presence. But Jesus, and I love him so much, he's so wise. He doesn't get upset. He doesn't get rattled. Again, he says, it is written, do not put the Lord your God to the test. A wise answer to this devious question and devious attempt to trick Jesus. Do not put your Lord to the test. Well, this comes from Deuteronomy 6:16. Moses again tells the people, don't test God as you did. And yes, it's read from us from the incident where they did test God, and that is from Exodus 17. So I want to flip now to Exodus 17 and see what we can draw from here. And we see there's three layers of the test that the people did. Now, a test in good hands is one thing, but in hands run sloppily, it's not going to give you good results. And these people are putting a test towards God. And in verse 1, we see that they're in the wilderness. They've just escaped from slavery in Egypt, and they're camping at Rephidim, but there's not water there. And this is where it comes. They quarrel with Moses, give us water to drink. They're blaming Moses. They've forgotten what they've just witnessed, what they've just seen. And they thirst for the water, and they complain, why did you bring us out of Egypt? So, first one, you don't care because you brought us here and there's no water and we need it. They're thinking about themselves right off the bat. But in verse 3, they say, why did you bring us out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst? So they've elevated it. They've made it even worse. You know, you don't care. In fact, you brought us out here to die, which of course is not the case whatsoever. Now, why should they have known better? What have they just witnessed? They were slaves in Egypt. Some of them were probably dying in Egypt. They were moaning and groaning for their freedom, and it was given to them. They saw those plagues. The plagues fell upon the Egyptians. It didn't fall upon them. Does that not show care? Does that not show protection of God? When down the road these bad things are happening, but you are protected from them? But the greatest of all that they had just witnessed was the destruction of Pharaoh's army. Who goes out into the wilderness? Who leaves Egypt to be destroyed? Pharaoh's army was the one that was destroyed. They were not destroyed. In fact, they'd been crying out to God, oh, no, we're going to die from Pharaoh's army. What can you do? We possibly can't see any way out. Wind comes along, water levels recede. They're able to get across. They should have known. They've seen all along. God's helped them. God's helped them. God's helped them. And they forgot. Now they want God to prove again who you are. Prove again that you care for us. And Jesus likes to do that. Or, sorry, Satan likes to do that, and he's doing it to Jesus right now. Prove God is there. Prove God cares. And he makes us do the same thing. He gives us a short memory, and it faces us all the time. When life is hard, we want God to change our circumstances. Because if he cares, we wouldn't be in this situation, would we? If God cared about us, why are we in this desert? Why are we in this wilderness area? And Moses calls this area Massa and Meribah because of the quarreling, and also they're testing the Lord, and this is the test. Is the Lord among us or not? Is God here with us? Well, we should know from past history that he has been with us. When you look back over your own personal life, has God not been there so many times? Of course he has. When we gather together here and talk with other people, brothers and sisters afterwards, we see what they've gone through and what they're pulling through, and God is with them. We look in the scriptures and we see the proof always throughout the scriptures of God there. And yet, what do? God, things aren't right. Prove that you care. Prove it again that you care to us. Is the Lord here or not? Is the Lord there at the temple or not? Sure, he's there. Do you always see him? Well, if you trust and have faith in him, you'll know he's there. You'll feel his presence. Why are we in the wilderness? These people, why are they in the wilderness? We're struggling through our struggle, our temptations, our trials, our struggles. Is God with us in the wilderness? Yes, he is always there. Now I'm going to flip it on these people. They're not here to answer, but on ourselves right here. And I want to ask you a few questions to challenge your own thinking. What does God owe you? Sometimes we think it's about us, but it isn't. What does he owe you? What is he required to do for you? Do you have a contract with God? God, you're required to do this for me. Is he required to make our life great? And is God only worthy of our praise and singing and thanking him when things are going to our plans, according to the way that we want? No. Now, God helps us out all the time. He loves us. He treats us as his children. And if we actually stop and quit feeling sorry for ourselves, we'll realize, yeah, God is there. He's helped us. He's helping me continuously. Do we turn away from God when he doesn't help us? Well, some people do, sadly. But I want to look at some men who do not do that. And this is from Daniel, familiar story. There's an egomaniac ruler, Nebuchadnezzar, and he wants to have his image worshipped. And there are three men who say, we're not going to worship an image. You know, we'll honor you, we'll do what you want, but we're not going to fall down and worship your image like other people are doing. And he gets angry at them. And he says, you will die. I'm going to throw you in fire and you're going to burn to death. Nasty way to go. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to present a defense to you in this matter. We're not going to answer. We're not going to respond to you. If our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the furnace of blazing fire and out of your hand, O king, let him deliver us. Let God speak for himself. We're not going to try and rationalize anything. But if not, if he doesn't save us, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods and we will not worship the golden statue that you have set up. In other words, we know God is with us. We're going to trust him and we're not going to go against the code, against the law, and worship something else. So we have faith and trust in God. If we're ready to die for him, then we'll die for him. And the thing is, there have been so many people over the centuries who have done that. Even into the very present time, there are Christians willing to stand up to God, stand up for God against the authorities or whoever is trying to push it on them. So, how do we score the victory? Well, you trust in God. Let him be your defense. But we can't put ourselves in harm's way. And Jesus realized that. We can't make bad decisions. We can't turn against God and then say, oh, God, help us out. We're relying on you. You said you'd help us out. It would have been a bad decision for Jesus to jump out. Why would he do that? He's tempting God. No. And we can't disregard God's commands and then expect him to pull the fat out of the fire for us, so to speak. Do not fail to listen to God and to his commands and then wonder, where is God? Why is God not helping me out for my poor decision? Does God care for us? Well, that's a rhetorical question, but it's also one with a definitive answer. Yes, he cares for us. Romans 5 and 8. God proves his love for us in that while we were sinners, Christ died for us. Do we forget that? We shouldn't. Every week we remember that. That's why we come, so that we don't forget Christ died for us. That is the definitive proof of his love. He died for us. So when you're feeling down, when you're feeling that evil, malevolent presence whispering in your ear, creating the doubts, remember Christ. Remember he died for you. Remember how he scored the victory, and you can score the same victory. I'll now close with Matthew 15. Just before Jesus dies, he knows he's going to die. He's going to his death. And he says to his disciple, no one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. If we do what God commands us, we are his friends. He will protect us. He protected Jesus. He's protected so many people in scriptures. He's protected so many followers throughout history, and he will protect us. Never doubt that.